You know, when you're a kid, they're an object of fascination and often terror. But for more adults than you'd guess, bees are a way of life. And for all of us, they play a much more important role than most believe. Recent years have brought about fears over a collapse of our honeybee population. And here to explain why it matters, we have Thom Trusewicz. He's an expert beekeeper from the Oregon State Beekeepers Association. You can email your questions if you have them to news@kohd.com. In the meantime, Thom, thank you very much for being here.
Jay,
Hello to
glad
you.
to meet you.
Yes, well, let's start there with the basic science. Why should we care about honeybees, Thom?
Because honeybees pollinate most of the foods that we eat. And if they collapse totally, we're going to have very few things to eat anymore.
How do they do that?
They sense the scent of the pollen on the wind, and they go in and they grab a little bit of the pollen and put it in what they call pollen baskets on their legs, the little hairy membranes of their legs. And then they carry it off to the next flower and they drop some off as they're picking up more, hence the cross-pollination of plants.
Yeah, homeowners often try to get the bees off their property, but if you're a grower, often you will pay someone like you, to come to your property and make sure bees are there, correct?
And yes, and a lot of hobby beekeepers, when they first established their bee colonies in their property, the neighbors are a little upset. But when the neighbors see how their gardens do afterward, they don't seem to mind so much.
So let's talk about colony collapse disorder. That's the name that we've given to this sudden and still mysterious disappearance of honeybees.
It is very prevalent still. Some of the commercial beekeepers haven't been hit as badly this year. I was hit particularly badly. I lost 80% of my colonies. But I'm a hobbyist beekeeper, so I only keep 10 colonies at one time. But the disease, we're really not sure what it is. It's more of an immunity disease. In people, it would be, let's say, AIDS is compromised immune system. And what happens is that the bees sometimes lose their way. They cannot find their way back. Sometimes they just abscond and leave the hive. It's pretty disastrous. A lot of times when a colony does leave the hive, other colonies will go in and steal the food. But if they left because of CCD, other colonies will not go in and steal the food.
Do we have solutions on the way, or is part of that tied in with pinning down exactly what's causing the disease, because we don't know that?
Well, there's a lot of people trying anecdotal treatments for it, and nothing really seems to be happening yet. Without getting too scientific, it shows that there's a lot of viruses the bees are getting that they never got before, and it's a disaster.
Thom, I want to call the cause there the million-dollar question, but that's vastly underselling it. How much would it cost our economy if these bees were to disappear?
Billions and billions. It's just the whole food chain would be disrupted.
Okay.
But no.
Yeah, Thom, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll pick up the conversation right there. Excuse me. Back with Thom here, our beekeeping expert. Also let you know where you can hear more from Thom tomorrow as well. Stay with us. And welcome back. Thom Trusewicz is our guest tonight, an expert beekeeper. He'll be speaking tomorrow at a popular class you do every other year.
Every other year in Bend.
Yes, the First Baptist Church, and we've got some questions. Maybe you'll hear them tomorrow, courtesy of Mike checking in tonight. Thank you, Mike. First question, is it possible wastewater used in fertilizer and wastewater, I imagine it, used on plants is causing CCD? Mike, forgive me for mangling your question. Can you make sense of that?
Mike, yes, I can. Mike, it is maybe part of it. I would say it's chemical use, agricultural chemical use in general, and the chemicals we were treating the bees for years. We were using some very nasty chemicals, and it may have changed the bees and compromised their immune system.
And why haven't we seen a dramatic rally now that we've seen some of those old pesticides go by the wayside?
It's going to take some time. Because beekeepers are using fewer and fewer medications now. I don't use any at all. And it's going to take some time to develop a good genetic stock where bees can actually survive the winter without being medicated.
We're hopeful that we see this collapse as a type of a curve where it reached its peak at one point and now we're returning. Is that an accurate assessment? Are we out of the woods, so to speak?
We're beekeepers. We're hopeful.
You're hopeful.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I believe Mike has another question,
Okay.
if we can take that as well. Along the same lines, could a cocktail of pharmaceuticals in our water be affecting the flight worthiness of the bees, or maybe disorienting them? Again, thank you, Mike.
Again, it could be. There's no scientific proof that shows it's the smoking gun.
Let me ask you this, Tom. When you go down the grocery store aisle, and I know that you have products yourself, and you see people pulling the artificial honey off the shelves, what crosses your mind?
Well, I sell raw honey, and raw honey is much better for you because it has all the pollens and local molds and different spores in it. So it's much better for you. The other stuff is processed. It's like boiled maple syrup, so it's not very good for you.
Is it true that if I were to buy honey from an Oregon grower, it would do a better job of keeping me healthy as opposed to a jar of honey from a grower in Vermont or somewhere on the East Coast?
They say local honey is much better for you. Now, this is anecdotal. They haven't done any double-blind studies to make sure this is true.
You're still a scientist, not a salesman yet, Tom.
Yeah.
Yes, working on it about 10 years now. Let me ask you before you go, you'll be at the First Baptist Church,
yes.
Correct? And I understand some 60 people have already signed
68 as of yesterday.
Congratulations on that. Here are the details. You can read them off to folks here, Tom.
I think the room will hold about 90 people. It starts to, oh no, that's the Sunday portion, is going to start at 11:30. The one tomorrow starts at 9 in the morning. Registration begins at 8.
Okay, and what's for lunch?
Bring your own lunch, please, because it's going to be a long class. It's a 6-hour class. Should get over at 3, but I will stay until all questions are answered. Okay, that's Tom, and of course he's here courtesy of the Central Oregon Beekeepers Association. So those folks are hard at work here as growing season begins. Tom, it's nice to meet you. Thank you, Jay.
Okay,
nice
appreciate it. Yes, we've got Sports Central Oregon Style coming your way next. This week's Sports Stars of Tomorrow meet at the net. Keith Blyer talks to the Panthers about how individual tennis players make up a team.
Get KOHD Sky Tracker weather on Light 95.1, your weekend getaway radio station. Continuous light favorites, Light 95.1 and Light951.com.